Thank you. Thank you. Whoa, Grace, she was preaching, wasn't she? Thank you so very much. It is more than an honor to be part of this 30th annual Martin Luther King Symposium here in Ann Arbor. Before I start, though, I have to say that I find myself now knowing the definition of cruel and unusual punishment. And that is to be asked to follow your men's glee. I sat out and to hear them, and I felt every emotion possible: anger, pain, joy, hope, despair. Thank you, Glee Club. And I too would like to offer a special welcome to the young people of the Gear Up program. We had a couple of minutes together earlier, and I know that our world is in great hands because I met you. Thank you. Now, I'm probably going to tell you a little bit more about my speech preparation modus than you really want to know, but you're just going to have to deal with it. So when I received the theme for this year, Who Will Be Next, which was a few months ago, I got the theme and they said, you know, they are putting this in the context of both who will be the next to lead, but also who will be the next to suffer the injustice of racism by being killed. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is a powerful theme. And so as I sat with the theme for a few weeks, and I was just like, my goodness, what an awesome theme. And then after about a couple of weeks, I thought, no. How can we be asking that question? How can we be saying who will lead and who will be killed? Really? No, we shouldn't even be asking that. We should be saying, where can I lead? And there will be no next. And so I was thinking, okay, so now how do I do this diplomatically? Because clearly, you know, they thought about this theme, right? And it was empowering to the young people who sat and thought this through. So I have to come at this in a way that doesn't say, I don't like that question, right? And then they sent me their theme statement. And if I were more flexible, I'd have been doing cartwheels in my house when I read that statement, because it was very clear that in asking the question, they actually were not asking the question. They were putting up a challenge to each of us. Who will be next? Maybe what we should be saying is, we are all next, and we refuse to allow anyone else to be next. And I thought, you know, that makes absolute sense. But we need to think of ways to make us all able to grasp the fact that each of us must live as though we were the next leader in the social justice movement. And I think that maybe what we start with is start unpacking what we know about those who have been leaders. Because, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. was not born Martin Luther King. Well, he was born Martin Luther King Jr., right? Seriously, I don't want to have any questions about that out there, you know. We've had enough questions about people's birth in this country, right? So, he was not born a leader of a civil rights movement. He was not born a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He was not born an amazing orator. He was born a human being who looked at the world in which he lived and said, "This isn't right." And he said, "This isn't right, and I have to be part of those who make it right. I have to use the gifts that I have been given. I have to use the challenges that I have experienced. I have to use my life experiences, my connections, my journey to be one of those who makes it right." And did you notice I said he was born a human being? Now, I don't know if there's anybody in this room who could not raise their hand if I asked the question, were you born a human being? Yes. Were you born with gifts? Yes. Have you had opportunities and challenges in your life? Do you see that our world is not right? Do you want to be amongst those who make it right? Yes. So that is where we start. That is where we start, is in recognizing that it is not right. It is not right that a 12-year-old can be playing in the playground and 30 seconds later he is dead. It is not right that a young woman is stopped at a traffic stop and a few days later is dead. It is not right. It is not right that children in Syria live in fear. It is not right that children in Afghanistan and Iraq recognize the sound of drones. It is not right. It is not right that people in Flint, Michigan have been washing in and drinking poisoned water because somebody wanted to save money. It is not right. It is not right that a young girl gets thrown across a classroom by somebody who is meant to be in school to keep our children safe. It is not right. And what makes it even worse is then to hear the justifications that come up in all of those examples I cited. He didn't look like he was 12 years old. His gun didn't look like a toy gun. She shouldn't have answered back. She should have handed over that cell phone. Yes, maybe they should have done all those things. But not doing those things should not be a death sentence. It is not right. It is not right, let me tell you, as the mother of a black son, that each time he leaves my home, even when he's just going to visit friends around the corner, I tell him, call me as soon as you get there and let me know that you are safe. It isn't right that when I send my child off to college, I have to say to him, if you get stopped by the police, call somebody and keep your phone open the whole time. It isn't right. It isn't right that as black parents, those things that we are told to teach our children, we don't apply to our children. Because when my children were growing up, I took them to those child safety workshops run by the Y and other organizations that say to young people, if a stranger comes up to you, yell, scream, fight, do whatever you can so that people pay attention to what is happening to you. Because I'm sure that's what Trayvon Martin's mother told him. And that was justification for his murder. It isn't right, people. It isn't right. It isn't right that our schools in the inner cities have become, in many instances, holding areas, not educational facilities. And I say this knowing amazing teachers working in inner city schools who say we try, we love our students, we want to encourage our students. We don't have the time. We are told to prepare for the tests. We are told basically to prepare our children to fail. It isn't right. So we see all these things that are not right. And it's easy to look at all those things and feel overwhelmed. So what can I do? I'm just one human being. But if we look at all of those who, when the question was asked during their lives, who will be next? If we look at those who stepped up, we will see that they didn't allow the extent of the problem to overwhelm them. They said, I can make a difference. It might be a small difference in the lives of maybe just a few people. But I am going to make that difference. I have been so fortunate in my life to have been exposed to people from around the world who looked at something that sat wrong with them and said, I'm going to make a difference. Many of them, the names are world known, but many are people whose names no one but those they affected directly will know. I have spent time with Emma Tiny Mashinini, a trade unionist in South Africa when trade unions were banned. A name that probably not millions of people know. But she worked tirelessly as a trade unionist, being arrested, being held in solitary confinement, being beaten, to make sure that people in South Africa had the right to form trade unions. Her name might not be known around the world, but part of the reason that we have a labor movement in South Africa is because of Emma Mashinini. And I mention her name because I think very often we feel, if I'm not on a world stage, then the changes I make, the contributions I make, don't matter. The truth is, we are not all going to be Nobel Peace Prize winners. And believe you me, I know, because I've nominated myself about 15 times. And they haven't even responded to say, we received your nomination letter, we will consider you. So we might not all be Nobel Peace Prize winners, but we can be community peace activists. We can decide that we are not going to be silent in the face of injustice. We can decide that when we hear family and friends justifying the killing of unarmed Black children, we will speak up. That we won't allow people to say Black children are not children, that they're thugs, that they're big for their age, that they look scary, that they're demonic. That's my child you are talking about. And we can decide that we will all say, those are our children you are talking about. We don't all have to be world-renowned. We can be locally appreciated. Locally appreciated for being the ones raising the hard issues, for being the ones who will say, this is not right, even when it brings us into conflict with people that we love and respect. We can be those who are locally appreciated because we decide to speak to those whom our community tells us are those suspicious others. We can be locally appreciated because we are those who choose to listen to those our community tells us are the suspicious others. I am not one who buys into this idea that we are all the same. We are not all the same. And I am one who believes that we are different for a purpose. That our world needs our differences. Our world needs the diversity of the human experience, the diversity of the human mind, the diversity of the way we see things in order to build a just world. Out. Are you okay? We are different because our world needs our different gifts. We are different because our world needs us to look at something and each see just something slightly different in that picture. Something that we bring to the attention of everyone else so that together we get a broader view of what is needed and of what is possible. Who will be next is asking you, what is it that you see that others might not? What is it that you hear that others are ignoring? But in a like way, what is it that you are choosing not to see that someone else can bring into your vision? What is it that you no longer hear that different ears can play back to you? Who will be next is saying, you might not be the next Martin Luther King Jr. But you know what? Maybe our world doesn't need the next Martin Luther King Jr. The world needs the next you. I listen to the critiques that are made of those leading movements today. The Black Lives Matter, the Say Her Name. And over I'm hearing people saying, you know, you're not acting like Martin Luther King Jr. You know, what you need to be is more like Martin Luther King Jr. He brought us all together. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are you reading the same history books I'm reading? Are you looking at the same newspaper coverage and media coverage of Martin Luther King Jr. that I was taught? Do you not remember how he was vilified as divisive, as communist sympathizer, as race baiter, as agitator, outside troublemaker in his day for raising the issues of concern in his day? And I come to that with some personal experience, because when I grew up in South Africa, my father was, at that time, for many white South Africans, public enemy number one, because the other public enemies number one were locked up, you know. So, but it got to the point when we were going to go shopping, we'd say to my dad, why don't you stay home, okay? Because really, it gets old walking down the street and like, there's that troublemaker. You know, you are giving comfort to our enemies. And so, yeah, we used to tell him, just stay home. We love you, but we can do without you on this particular trip. And that now, a few years ago, there was a poll on a radio station that said, you know, we want people to call in with the most popular South Africans. And they said, but you cannot call in Nelson Mandela or Desmond Tutu. It's like, when did that happen? So, just to remember that the Martin Luther King Jr. that many talk about today never existed. He was a man who challenged. He challenged the racism in this country. He challenged the international policy of this country. He challenged the economic policy of this country. So whilst everybody speaks of the I have a dream speech, very few quote the speech that he made the night before he was killed to those striking workers about economic inequality and the need for economic justice in this country. Very few quote his letter from a Birmingham jail where he challenged his fellow church leaders, saying, I see you as fully human, and I insist that you see me and mine as the same. Few talk about his statements regarding the Vietnam War and the struggles for independence on the African continent. So I say this to say to the young people leading today's movements, don't worry. Don't worry that people say you are not next. You are next. You are raising your voices in a glorious tradition of people who have said, this is not right. And I am going to be one of those who make it right. I stand in front of you today as someone who often holds on to hope for justice and peace by the skin of my teeth. Often and often, in my home, I cry when I think of our lost children. Often and often, when I read, and I always tell myself, don't read the comments following stories. I say that to myself each time just as I open the comment section and hear our people being dehumanized and hear justification for oppression and violence and anger and divisiveness. I hang on to hope by the skin of my teeth. When I listen to some of what is now passing as political discourse, when did we fall so low? That we accept hate as political discourse. I hold on to hope by the skin of my teeth. And I'm able to hold on to hope because I see so many not waiting to be asked who will be next. I see so many being courageous enough to put out their hands to those who would dehumanize them. I see so many who say, I know our world can be better. And here, where I am, is where I will make a difference. I see mothers in Nashville who have come together to say, as mothers, we have to say each and every child in this community is our child, and therefore each and every child in this community deserves to go to bed feeling safe, being fed, know that they're going to school where they will be educated, and not simply held until they are sent to prison. I see police officers who say, I am not willing to be silent and justify extrajudicial shootings by other police officers in the name of loyalty. I am going to stand up and say, as a good policeman, that you give us a bad name. I am not simply going to be silent. I see a professor who says, I am going to wear a hijab to my classes to show that I stand in solidarity with the Muslims in our country and in our world, because I am not going to be silent in the face of Islamophobia. They have not waited to be asked, who will be next? They have said, I am next. So I stand here as one who knows that injustice can be turned to justice, who knows that oppression can be moved to freedom, who knows that hate can be conquered by love. And I stand here asking each one of you, please, will you be next? Please, will you be next? Thank you.